You're watching Smart Money with me, Ibrahim Sani. This episode is an extremely emotional one for me because I'm currently at the Cradle office here in Sunway Putra Tower, downtown KL. The reason why I'm here is, of course, to interview the acting CEO, Razif Abdul Aziz, where his arrival into the CEO-ship has come under quite a shock for many of us in the media, in the startup ecosystem, as well as in the business world. The conversation revolves on the late CEO of Cradle, Nazrin Hassan, also the founder of Cradle. I knew the deceased, I think, over a decade ago. The first time we met was on the verge of the creation of Cradle, and ever since then, the progress of Cradle has always been quite an interesting one. So I did promise him that I'll interview him, but his time has come to pass. So the conversation will be on how Cradle and their stakeholders, including its supporters, people like me, will now have to regroup ourselves and move on. I will speak to the acting CEO of Cradle, Razif Abdul Aziz, on the preparation that the deceased Nazrin Hassan has prepared for him. Razif, of course, was the COO, or the Chief Operations Officer of the company, and the rumor mill, or the conversation that the market has always been on how Nazrin, the late Nazrin, has always been preparing Razif to take over the leadership of Cradle. The conversation that I have with him will revolve predominantly on his background and how ready he is to lead the organization. Enjoy the interview. Congratulations on your appointment. I just want to understand a little bit better about the role that you have done before, and what kind of expectations that we can expect following your appointment as the acting CEO.
Yeah. Well, previously I was in a very operational role, the Chief Operations Officer for Cradle since 2015. Basically, it covers everything except for investment. And I suppose it plays towards my background as a lawyer, I suppose. So corporate services, legal, HR, human resources, those kind of functions would be under me, and I would deal with pretty much all of the operational details that comes across his table. He would basically look more on the bigger picture stuff, meeting with partners and stuff like that, creating all the collaborations and all that. So I guess over the last 3 to 4 years I've been here, I have had a good, sort of like working knowledge of how things work behind the scenes in terms of, how to keep this thing moving. That includes finance as well. We deal a lot with the government funds, the allocation that give us, making sure that these allocations are handled properly, and so I think over the recent year or so, because of our succession planning program that we've put in place, which is across the company and all the key positions in the company, we're basically making sure that for each function we would have a credible candidate that would be able to be moved up the ladder, so to speak, when the time comes. So I've gradually been brought into the collaboration space as well. So I worked with Arwah Nazrin in terms of speaking to partners, collaboration partners, corporates, in bringing them on board and how we can work together. So he has slowly taken me through that process as well on the investment side as well. So I do sit on a very early sort of like first filter stage. So I now have a view of the investment process as well. Not that I didn't have any previously, but now I'm sort of like put into the whole process as well.
And of course, the conversation revolves as well on your grooming or the grooming part of you taking over the CEO-ship. When I attended the Cradle Buzz a few weeks back, they were talking about the fact that they, meaning the people that are your partners, lawyers, some LPs as well that attended, already talking about Allahyarham Nazrin trying to make you ready for the CEO-ship.
Yes.
I think the whole expectations of you taking over from Allahyarham is clear, but the manner of it, of course, came as a sudden surprise.
Yes.
Does that transition period shock you in a way?
Well, of course. I mean, given the circumstances of the death, it was, in that sense, inevitable, that the team would be a bit sort of like we were taken aback. I mean, we were reeling in that sense over a period of a week or so. It was a bit of a surreal experience. For some of us, we even felt that, he was still around in that sense. It took, I think, a week or two for the team to slowly sort of like get back to a certain sense of normalcy. And yes, it was sudden, but I think without even thinking about it, people just slowly, like, we consolidated, things just got in gear in that sense. I suddenly realized that everyone was looking at me for leadership, and I just had to do it. You just went into it. You just jumped in, and took over. And I think I'm quite thankful that the team has rallied behind me since, and we have, sort of like come together very well. And right now, as we speak, even I think Cradle Buzz was a great, in a sense, a good sort of like milestone, from that event, and now sort of like us moving forward. It was like a nice break in terms of we're on our own now. Yeah.
So it's sort of like a psychological break as well. From
yes,
the before.
It's sort of like we sort of like successfully transitioned to this space where we are on our own and we're pretty much well equipped. I mean, he's prepared us for this, so it's time to press on. Yeah.
Who is the real Razif that the ecosystem startup needs to know?
Well, I've been in this space since 2006 actually. Previously, I was with a mix of private sector MNCs. I was with Philip Morris, so selling cigarettes. I was in corporate affairs in Philip Morris. My first job was with Kumpulan FIMA. The late arwah Tan Sri Basir is sort of like private vehicle, along with luminaries like Tan Sri Abdul Aziz Omar had his start. Was there before. Datuk Bazlan Osman, who's now at Telecoms, was also there. Datuk Azlan Hashim. So I got my start there. It has always revolved around tech. When I was with FIMA, I was like selling jets, fighter jet, the F-18 Hornets.
Yeah.
We sold the McDonnell Douglas MD-11s, DC-10s to most people, the three engine version. And then we saw helicopters, power turbines and all that. So it's always revolved around tech. I have moved, I've done different functional areas from business development, marketing. I've covered HR. Hence, I'm in that sense a generalist. I'd like to think of myself as someone who brings different experiences, different knowledge, I guess, from different areas and bringing it together and somehow making sense of everything. I suppose that's what Nazrin saw in me in 2006. I think I met him around 2008. That was when I was with Malaysian Biotechnology Corporation, or Biotech Corp, which is still around. That agency is still around. So I was looking at biotechnology, and he saw, I suppose, someone who can look at different tech areas, and
If anything, the background that you have is always on corporate leadership rather than the startup community. But of course, when we talk about the leadership of the company, Cradle Funds and Berhad, it's also a large institution. Do you think that the background that you have and the ecosystem that you need to carry forward, which is the ecosystem, the startup ecosystem, it can jive well, particularly when you need to have a large, mindset in mind, but at the same time you've got to work with startups nonetheless.
Yeah, I guess we're about 38 strong. I've led a division of that size, about 20 odd people, when I was at Biotech Corp. Incidentally, I was also the guy running the division which was in charge of all the biotechnology companies. We had our own sort of like, MDEC will have MSc status. Biotech Corp has its Bionexus status. So I was actually in charge of the Bionexus status companies, that special tax exempt status that we give for qualifying companies. So basically I was in charge of the welfare of these companies. In that sense, looking after entrepreneurs is something I've already done before. But of course, back then the focus was on biotech, and it's actually a tougher space to be in, arguably, because we're talking about lab to, bench to market, they call it, or lab to market, and there's so much more. In terms of the challenges, is way, so much more than getting, say, a B2B commerce, e-commerce platform up and running. You need more money to get to market if you're in biotech. There are regulatory issues as well, potentially. The tech is a bit harder to deal with because you're dealing with living organisms, and biotech in general, and it's a space that is not as well developed in that sense. There are less investors willing to put money in because it's very, very risky as compared to ICT, digital kind of ventures. So I think that time I spent, about 6 years I was there, helped me transition to this space where the basics are pretty similar. It's all about startups. It's all about tech startups in general. It's about entrepreneurship. In both spaces, you're talking about it needs massive amounts of support at the right time, at the right place, that kind of thing. So that hasn't changed.
So that was my conversation with Razif Abdul Aziz, the acting CEO of Cradle. If you want to learn more about Cradle, just head on to www.cradle.com.my. If you want to learn more about interviews like this, just head on to astroawani.com and search for Smart Money. That's it from me, Ibrahim Sani. Thanks and goodbye.